Hey, what's up guys, it's WiseGuyVito here, and today I have another tier list video for you guys. This will be Sentry turrets, more like the more defensive placement stratagems against the Automatons, which ones are very good, and the ones that you should be using versus the ones that are kind of weak and need to see some buffs. Probably shouldn't be using in the more harder difficulties, so 789 difficulties. If you would, leave a like, share, and subscribe, and let's get straight into a tier list. Before we get into a tier list, of course, let's kind of go over the tiers. S tier is a solid stratagem. It is a solid sentry to use. You should definitely use it if you are going to be using sentries against the Automatons, seeing how it's good in every scenario or every mission type that is in the game, and it can hold its own in 79 difficulty. A tier it's good. It might have some more use cases, but it's still an above average sentry. It still does good damage. It still survives because sentries have a problem with living in automaton missions because of how much projectiles are being thrown at them. But overall, like, they might not necessarily be good in some missions. They may be better in other missions, like very more defense-oriented missions. But you can still use them. They're still decent in 789 difficulty. B tier is just an average strat. There's nothing really special about it. It's more just average, plain Jane for the most part. C tier, it's underpowered. Definitely needs to see some buffs to it in order to make it more competitive in 79 difficulty. And then D tier, it's a dumpster fire. It's a dookie strat. Definitely see some buffs to it in order to make it good, or it's just not really that great against the Automatons. It's more of a stratagem that's built for another faction type, so like the Terminids, for example. So with that description out of the way, let's get into it. So first and foremost, I'm gonna get this one over with because I feel like it is by far probably like the worst sentry in the game currently, or like this defensive stratagem, right? And that's the Tesla Tower. I don't think Tesla Tower is that good, or is not good at all in Automatons. Definitely needs to see some buffs to it. Also as well, like, I really don't think that's, like, even if they were to buff it, it still wouldn't be necessarily good against the Automatons because it's more for enemies that come at you, whereas the Automatons, they don't really necessarily come at you. There's some melee version types, of course, right? So there's like the Berserkers, there's little dudes with little knives in their hands and stuff like that, little tinier bots or whatever, the commando style of bots. But other than that, it's more of a stratagem that's geared towards Terminids. But even against Terminids, it's not that great. Putting in D tier for the time being, they really need to buff the survivability of this stratagem in particular, make it live longer, because right now it's just an electric toothpick. Like, it's completely made out of paper mache. Definitely to see some sort of HP buff to the actual stratagem itself. The shield generator, I don't use this stratagem at all. We've used it a couple times in the Automaton missions. I feel like the shield does not last as long, coupled with the fact that there are some projectiles that just won't go through the actual bubble once you're inside of it. If they made the bubble way more tankier, it would probably be more of a solid B to A, because it would still be more of like a defensive stratagem. So like, it would not be good against those missions where you're moving from place to place. Whereas this, it feels, it kind of feels underwhelming in my opinion. The Rocket Sentry, I feel like, is very good. It's very good against the new flying patrol ships. It feels really good against them. It also feels really good against tanks, more of like the tankier, no pun intended, but tankier enemies in the game. So tanks, the Hulks as well. It's even kind of like a medium armor buster. So if it won't shoot at, if there's no Hulks or anything like that, it will still shoot at the the next biggest target, right? So they really upped the overall feel of the Sentry, and I'm very pleased with what they did damage wise and targeting wise, because now it can target out farther since the latest patch. So I feel like it is definitely one of the better stratagems in the entire game. So landmine, it does feel better, because it does more damage for sure. I think the only problem is that vehicles, it does really bad against vehicles. It does well against the more foot soldier enemies in the game. So this would be like little commando guys, the berserkers, The Devastators as well, so shield Devastators, and you know, like, it does well, but again, like, it's kind of very case sensitive on, or like, the niche that it kind of fills, which is, it is strictly a defensive stratagem, right? So, you know, the missions where you have to defend the generators, or even just like eradicate a bunch of automatons as well, or even like if you just hold on to the stratagem and kind of wait to the end of the mission to where you fly off, extract or whatever, then I think it does well there. I think the problem with you holding it for that long is that you are effectively wasting a slot until the very end of the mission. So I would highly recommend not doing that. But as far as like the more defensive missions, it does pretty well overall. Same thing with the fire mines. The fire mines, I think, are a little bit weaker than the regular mines, just simply because of like a Hulk stepping on it or whatever. Like, it's not gonna do that much damage compared to some of the other or like comparatively to the other mines, it's not going to be that strong, but you know, it does okay work. Autocannon, I feel like it's up there in S tier as well. It's very, very good medium armor buster, and it does do very, very well against heavy armor targets. I just feel like the rocket Sentry does better against heavy armor targets, because since it prioritizes that. The autocannon doesn't prioritize heavy targets. It mainly goes after kind of like the first thing that it sees and just destroys it. That's why I think it's better as a medium armor buster than anything else. But overall, though, it's a fantastic stratagem. Still use it. I would even say if you're going to run the more, you know, Sentry heavy build, you can definitely use the rocket pod Sentry and the autocannon Sentry as well. EMS mortar, still S tier. It's just great CC. Crowd control. Enemies are coming up on you. Throw this down. It stops everything in its tracks. You're able to kill it quickly. You know, kind of like it just stops everything in its tracks, so that you're able to kind of take a breather. And it works very, very well against the automatons, just for the simple fact that they're so oppressive, and it kind of just chills everything out. So definitely one of the best stratagems in the game. The HMG placement, I feel like it is A tier. I do think that it is more geared towards a defensive mission, but you can use it on those more on-to-go missions, from going from objective to objective. It does really, really well against really any automaton that the game throws at you. So it does really well against Devastators. It does very well against Devastators. It does really well against the flying patrol ships as well. Very, very well against them. And overall, it's just a solid strat. You know, it is definitely, and you can control it. The rotation speed got buffed by 100%, so it makes it a little bit more agile, a little more versatile than what it was before. It's not as clunky, and that's why I'm putting it up in A tier. Before, you know, like pre-patch, I would probably put it in B tier, but just that simple change of it being faster as far as the rotation speed goes, it definitely feels like an A tier stratagem. Gatling Sentry, I feel like it's probably going to be A. It does okay work. I feel like it's way better on Terminids than anything else. I think its problem kind of stems from, you know, will it kill the thing fast enough before it blows up? In a recent patch, they did fix or did buff Sentries again, where the rocket explosions won't one-shot Sentries anymore. So that definitely helps out the survivability, but can the Gatling Sentry kill, you know, the automatons fast enough before it blows up? You know, it's kind of hit or miss in my opinion. But overall, you know, I think it's still like a competitive pick. It just might not be that competitive compared to more of the picks in S tier. Mortar Sentry. The reason why I'm going to put it in S is because whereas with the Terminids, you're kind of like fighting the Terminids like in their face type of deal. With the automatons, you can kind of be near the mortar sentry and have it clear out some of the stuff that you're not clearing out yourself. So overall, I think that the mortar, now of course, like the mortar sentry, I think is way better on defensive missions because you can kind of just throw it down and kind of just chill beside of it and let it do all the work for you. So this would be like the more kill missions, so you have to eradicate a certain number of automatons, and the more defensive missions, so like the ones that we have to defend like a generator and stuff like that. I think it does very, very well in those particular missions, stuff like that. The more on to go missions, it's still very, very good. I think the only problem is that with it comes team killing, right? This sentry is notorious for team killing because people tend to forget that it's there, and you'll throw it out. Your teammates might not know that you've thrown a mortar sentry out, and then it'll just kill them because they might be too close to the enemy or whatever. With the automatons, you kind of don't have to worry about that as much because, you know, the automatons are more of a ranged enemy compared to the Terminans, right? So overall, I think it's very, very good against the automatons. It definitely clears out more devastators. It does damage the more heavy armor targets, but for the most part, it's a fantastic ag clear overall. And of course, the little itty bitty sentry I think is probably B tier. It's definitely a good spammable sentry, but the overall power of the sentry is very average. But you can throw it as more often, so there's kind of like a trade-off, you know, like, so you have a basic, you know, sentry, right, a decent on damage, but you can throw it out way more often. I think they reduced it to around like 80 to 90 seconds or so. So it'll definitely be more of like a little helper for you than rather just ad clearing everything for you on the screen, which, you know, you may want that, right, in your more gameplay style. The only problem with it is that, you know, with its low damage output, will it survive more often? You know, I feel like it's a better sentry for the Terminans than it will be for the automatons. So anyways, that's my tier list. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section about my tier list. Where am I right, where am I wrong? And I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.